All right, welcome to The Explainer. The auto industry, it's just this massive, complex beast, right? Especially if you're looking at it as an investor. So today, we're going to break it all down. We'll look at how cars are actually made, what makes the Indian market so special, and most importantly, how you can spot the key signs of a healthy auto company. Let's kick things off with just one number, 30,000. What's that? Well, that's roughly how many individual parts, from the engine all the way down to the tiniest little screw, are in the car you probably drive every single day. It's just an amazing feat of engineering and coordination. So, all of that complexity, it really makes you think, right? When you put your money into an auto company, what are you actually buying? Because it's not just a company that makes cars. You're investing in this gigantic, sprawling global network of suppliers, factories, and dealerships. Okay, so here's the plan. We're going to start with the big picture, the whole auto ecosystem. Then we'll zoom right in on India's unique spot on the map. And after that, we'll get into the real nitty-gritty, how to actually analyze these companies and figure out the real story behind their growth. All right, first up, we've got to get our heads around how a car is even made in the first place. And, it's probably not what you're thinking. Okay, so here's the absolute key thing to understand. Those big, famous auto brands they don't actually make all of those 30,000 parts. Nope. They're more like master assemblers. They run these incredible, massive plants where all the pieces just come together. So where do all those parts come from? Well, they get them from this huge global network of other companies. And in the industry, these guys are called original equipment manufacturers, or OEMs for short. We're talking everything: engines, transmissions, airbags, touchscreens. They're all made by specialized OEM companies and then sold to the car brand. So you can basically think of the whole business as this three-step dance. Step one, source all the bits and pieces you need from thousands of different suppliers. Step two, put them all together in these giant factories. And step three, sell the finished car to you and me. The companies that are the best at managing this chain are the ones that win. Okay, so now that we get the basic model, let's zoom out and see where India fits into this whole global picture. Because, let me tell you, it's become a huge player. So get this, in 2022, something pretty big happened. India officially overtook Japan to become the third largest car market in the entire world. That's based on the sheer number of vehicles sold, a massive milestone. But what's really fascinating here is the sense of scale. Being number 3 is a huge deal, no doubt. But look at this chart. India's at about 4.6 million cars sold. Then you've got the US way up there at 14 million, and China's in a whole other universe at 26 million. It just shows you how much room there might be to grow. All right, let's zoom in even closer now. Because the Indian auto market, it has its own unique flavor. You can't just copy-paste what works in other countries. You have to understand what makes it tick. Okay, take a look at this. When we talk about the auto market, we often think of cars, right? Well, in India, that's not the whole story. Not even close. Two-wheelers, they make up a massive 75% of all vehicles produced. 75%. That just speaks volumes about the economy and what people need for day-to-day transport. And this right here, this is the number that gets investors really excited. Only about 8% of households in India own a car. Compare that to over 50% in more developed nations. You can just see the massive, massive potential for growth there as the economy grows, can't you? Okay, so we've got the lay of the land. Now let's get to the important part for us as investors. How do you actually figure out if a company is doing well? What numbers should you really be looking at? We're going to look at 4 specific numbers, 4 KPIs. Now, there are tons of metrics out there, but these 4, when you put them together, they tell you a really clear story about what's actually going on inside an auto company. First, you've got production volume. Super simple. This is just how many cars the company literally built, how many rolled off the assembly line in a certain month or quarter. It tells you about their manufacturing power. And right next to that, you've got sales volume. This is the one that always makes the headlines, right? It's how many of those cars they actually manage to sell to real customers. This is your direct measure of market demand. But here's where it gets really interesting. You have to compare the two. If a company is selling more cars than it's making, wow, that is a great sign. Demand is hot. But if they're making more than they're selling month after month, that's a warning sign. It means cars are just sitting around in lots, unsold. And you know what that leads to? Discounts. And discounts just eat away at profits.
But listen, just looking at the number of cars sold, that's only scratching the surface. If you really want to understand what's happening and find the best companies, you have to dig a little deeper. Let's decode the real growth story.
Okay, check this out. It's a really simple example. In both year 1 and year 2, this company's sales volume, the number of cars sold, grew by 5%. Okay, nice and consistent. But look at the revenue. In year 2, it jumped by 10%. So, how did they do that? How did they double their revenue growth while selling the same extra number of cars? Well, there are really two main ways this magic trick happens. First, they might be selling more of their expensive models, more premium SUVs and fewer of their basic hatchbacks. We call that improving the product mix. Or second, they're just getting more money for each car they sell. Maybe they raised prices or offered fewer discounts. That's called better realization. And this idea of product mix, you have to remember this one. It is so, so important. A company that's improving its product mix isn't just selling more cars, it's selling better cars. And by better, I mean from a business perspective, cars with bigger price tags, and crucially, fatter profit margins. That's the secret sauce. Here's the simple way to think about it. It's a classic business strategy. If you bought a company's entry-level car a few years ago, their goal today is to convince you to upgrade to the slightly bigger, more feature-packed, and more expensive model. That little upgrade, that's where they make the really good money. So the big takeaway here for any investor is this. Don't just look at the headline sales number. The real story, the profitable story, is always hidden in the details. It's in that relationship between volume, revenue, and what kind of cars are selling. So I'll leave you with this to think about. What does it mean when you see an automaker's revenue climbing, even when the number of cars they're selling isn't going up at all? Think about that, because the answer tells you everything you need to know about the health and the strength of that business.